Finance for hippies, teach swag and Daki. Finance for hippies, teach swag and Daki. Finance for hippies, teach swag and Daki.
Welcome to another episode of Finance for Hippies, brought to you by T-Swag, who is usually the assistant, gets me a bit of coffee and water, and I, the main host, Don Salamanca, aka Ndaki. Welcome to another different environment, different everything, economic environment. That everyone has found themselves in, but nonetheless, we are evolving, we're changing our vision to be successful in this specific, different challenging circumstances. I'll allow my assistant to say something.
Yeah. What's up to everybody who's catching this episode? So this is obviously a very special episode done especially for the R&B Turbine Art Fair. Same group. Yeah. All right, cool. Okay. The R&B Turbine Art Fair. So for everybody who's joining us for this special episode, we have a super special guest.
Welcome everybody.
So before we introduce our lovely and amazing guest, what we usually do on our show, for those who don't know our show is we have a podcast, Finance for Hippies, and we basically just teach some financial literacy to all our artists and creative friends out there. Before we introduce our guests, Ndaki, what we usually like doing is we like to tell you guys what we're drinking.
So usually what happens on the show is that there's alcohol involved. Usually when you're talking about finances, they'll tell you that it's better to get advice from a person who's sober. Usually here, we don't attempt to really educate per se. We really want to expand the discussions around finances, especially in the art field, which is something that usually takes the back seat quite dramatically. As T-Swag once said on his famous track, art over everything, but finances really play a key role on that. So this is what we really try and attempt to do. That's why we started the podcast to begin with, to really try and bring finances in the art field and in different art fields to the fore, investigate with our listeners to see how better can we manage our finances. Yeah, and I'm privileged to be part of the R&B Turbine Art Fair. R&B actually is quite close to my heart. I have a past relationship with them. They actually sponsored my junior undergrad degree in a great program under great guidance from the bank. Had the privilege of doing a little bit of time there back in my day when I was a bit younger. So it's nice to see that they're still supporting other fields such as art. The other events I've also followed was the FNB one that was held in Sandton. So the whole group seems to be very active in this field, which is good to see. And hopefully with the information that you guys have here, we can add it on top and have a broader discussion around finances.
Yeah, boy. So
you can introduce our guest, please.
Let me introduce our guest. So it's an alcohol-free episode. The only alcohol we got today is hand sanitizer. That's it. It's whatever's in our hand sanitizer. But so yeah, let me do what I do as T-Swag, introduce you guys to our amazing guests, because we podcast here, but because we want everybody to have the best information out there, we've got an amazing person. So I'm gonna just give you guys some credentials. You know, when I found out about her, actually, I was quite hurt and overwhelmed actually when I found out about like what she does and what they do, because I used to think like we're the hottest at this podcasting thing. I thought like, and then I found,
we ran the finance.
You know what I'm saying? I thought we ran this. So she is the CEO of Just One Lab. A platform that gives free financial education to the masses in a very, very accessible way. She is also the co-host of the award-winning Fat Wallet podcast, which has been around since 2016. She's going to clarify. Over 200 episodes in It's South African. It's such amazing content. I think you guys have also just reached 500,000 downloads. If I'm not sure yet. Her name is Christia Funda. Come on. Her name is Christia Van Heerden.
Yay!
And she's here to join us today. She's here to join us today on a very special episode, which is adapting to your financial vision. Christia, welcome to our show. We would have loved you. We had before COVID, we wanted to have you dance. We wanted to do like a dance themed episode. We've heard about you in dancing, right?
Yeah, that's a good bait for me. It's better than the rapping, I would say.
Great names on your podcast. And how did you pick these names? It's a bit more whimsical, playful. They're not too formal in the final. How do you end up with Just One Lap and the Fat Wallet?
Okay, so Just One Lap is the brainchild of my colleague, Simon Brown.
Okay.
And so he had worked in the financial services, much like you. Like, he worked in the financial services industry for a while. I worked for Standard Bank, and then he decided, you know what, corporate life, no thank you. I want to say it takes a very special kind of person to succeed in a corporate environment, but it actually takes a very special kind of person to step out of a corporate environment. And he was like, you know what, I've got one life. I mean, back in the day when he left, which was about 2007-ish, there was no, financial education really wasn't a thing that people did. It was still very much that environment of, we are the experts and we will tell you what to do with your money. And in return for that, you will pay us an enormous amount of money, for the service. And he just decided, you know what, this is simple enough for other people to do. So he started Just One Lap with very much a trading training platform. And then I joined in 2015, and we decided to make things very accessible to everybody. And then the Fat Wallet Show, how that started was when I joined, I was a financial journalist. I worked for FinWeek magazine. And then I decided, I got really frustrated because I felt like they weren't communicating properly. Like, they weren't explaining basic concepts, especially in personal finance. And then I joined Just One Lap, and oh my goodness, I learned so much. And you know what it's like when you go into the financial services industry or into your own financial life, and you start learning. There's just so much to learn, right? And I was having these conversations with Simon, who had been in the industry at that point for such a long time already. And then I thought, hey, well, let's record these conversations and let's give other people an opportunity to see what it's like for a beginner to learn about money as we go along. And that format was wildly successful. And then I think what really is the success of the show is that it's all community driven. So all of the topics that we discuss are questions submitted by our community. So every episode has basically a bunch of case studies of what real people who listen to the show are doing with their own money. When you start out, you tend to think there's one way, like this is how you manage your money, and that's the only way. But then when you start to listen to the show and you hear how different people approach it, you realize actually the more you learn, the more movement there is. And so the name for the Fat Wallet came basically from that. I was like, well, if you figure this out, you have a nice fat wallet. So it's not not deep thought that went into that one, but it seems to work.
No, we had the whole A/B testing with people for our name. Remember, we had a list of different names inside them.
So actually,
but
I just wanted to say my initial plan was to call it the Idiot Investor, like referring to myself. Nerina Visser, who is a person who's really well known in the ETF industry, was saying, people are going to think that you're calling them idiots, so maybe don't go for Idiot Investor. So that was the only other name in the running.
Exactly. Yeah. Look. I think you made a very good decision on that. I think you made a good decision on it.
And in terms of the special month that we're on for women, why we bring this up is that because we saw one interview that You mentioned that usually when there's discussions for ladies for finances, it's usually themed in pink, and there's shoes associated with it, which is
you lost it when, when you were talking about.
Maybe let's give this a bit more attention. Where do you think there might be a bit of lack in finances for literacy for ladies? Where do you think it can
I've
be
been thinking
posted
about
at?
this for a long time. And I got the answer when we did a survey of Fat Wallet listeners. And I'm getting, so the Fat Wallet is a conversation between us and our community. And that conversation happens via email. So people send us emails and then we respond. So it happens in social media and stuff as well. But that's how we kind of get what people are thinking about. And then we ran a survey, and I've been getting a lot of emails from women, and over the years that's been growing and growing and growing. But then when we did our survey, we got such a weird result because it was all men. And I was like, what is going on here? Because I know that it's not just men who listen to my podcast, because I can see the stuff that come in. And I mentioned this on the podcast, and then some women wrote me afterwards and said, look, we are busy. We don't have time to fill out surveys. Like when we come home at night, we cook for our families, we put the children to bed, we've got full-time jobs. We don't have time to interact in this way. So I think a part of the success of the format of the show for women is that you can listen to a podcast while you do your womanly stuff around the house. Like, and I mean womanly stuff in the sense of we still do a lot of that unpaid labor, the cooking, the cleaning, the kids, even though we're trying to address that, but that definitely is still the reality for most women. And you can do that stuff while you have headphones in your ears, or you can do that stuff while you're listening to a podcast. You can't sit on whatever the Business Day website for 4 hours a day. You don't have the time. And so I think that's definitely it's not about the information, because the information that we share on the Fat Wallet show lands equally with men and women. We don't need to tailor the information to women, because women don't need tailored information. We are perfectly capable of understanding everything that men can understand. We need to tailor the way that we deliver the information to the lifestyles of women. And I think that this is where the industry really falls short. And maybe that's also something that you guys are seeing with artists. Women's careers take a backseat when they have children. And you can't get around this. And this is equally true for a person in finance as it is for a person who is a visual artist or performer.
Yeah, there definitely is a lot of that, and it's not even I don't know if the word is weird, but specifically speaking within the visual arts, there's definitely still a challenge in terms of female artists who get the same kind of prominence as the male artists in terms of just the prominence in terms of the pricing of their works, and all that kind of stuff. And those are definitely politics that I guess platforms like what we are part of now and such things, look to investigate and dig deeper.
No, definitely. Back to the current state of affairs. The last couple of months has been turned upside down. To be honest, we all have to adjust, specifically artists and people in the performance arts who generated most of their funds from really going out there, performing, selling their wares, selling their artists and so forth. How have you guys adapted to, maybe how have you felt this change in
we were so lucky, because when I started working at Just One Lap, we have always worked remotely. We've never had an office. And let me tell you, in the financial services industry, if you don't have an office, or before this, if you didn't have an office, people thought you were insane. Like, it doesn't happen in the finance business. Artists are used to working from home, are used to being freelancers. And in the financial services industry, that just absolutely is not the case. So when lockdown happened, we already had the technology. I was already working from home for 5 years. We had already been doing webinars. We broadcast all of our live events as webinars anyway, even when we do them live. So we were in such a wonderful position and so incredibly lucky to be able to just continue as normal. So we just moved our podcast recordings from live recordings to Zoom recordings. And we had some gremlins in the process, but nothing too big. And we were able to adjust very quickly. I think for artists, you guys are in such a, the memory, the collective memory that we are going to have of this period in history. That is the responsibility of the artist now. And I think that this is a time.
Bars.
I think that in this process, as much as this has been unbelievably difficult for artists and people in the performing arts and not just, everybody in this country, I think that this is going to be the period where a lot of artists will be able to start a very strong career just because of this moment in history. And maybe you've been struggling to find a voice. And I think for an artist having, 3 months where you are forced to be alone, where you are forced to look inside and to process this through your art, I think this is going to be a really beautiful time as we come out of this for artists in terms of their work. And I think the economy as a whole and the artist economy is going to have to change a lot as well, because there just isn't froth. There's nothing extra for people to throw around. The economy is really taking strain. And, this is always the thing where people, you always cut the things that make your life beautiful are always the things that go first. It's like the things that keep you safe and the things that make your life beautiful. So it's like insurance and art out the window. And I think it's a really important time for artists to start to think about monetization and where money is going to come from. And it's going to have to look a bit different from before. It can't be, I suppose I'm calling for innovation, and I hate saying that because I just detest that word. Oh my God,
Steve Jobs.
And I get so sick of it, And when you're when you're a media company like we are, like a tiny media company, what people are constantly saying is, "Oh, you have to innovate," and then they just recommend that you do stuff that's been done and didn't work. So I don't I'm loath to prescribe anything, but I do think that it's an exciting time because we're starting from such a low base. And I think we are going to see incredible stuff.
People usually have, art, I guess it could have been for investment purposes. I guess it could be seen as an alternative asset class where people who can place the money. As you said, there isn't really much froth going around. How do you see that alternative investment asset class being hit? Do you guys do you think it will be hit a bit harder because usually more disposable income goes in there? How do you guys see the vision for
alternative investments in general? And I don't want to comment specifically on art because I'm not an art investor. I'm an art buyer, but I'm not an art investor. I'm not an alternative investor at all. But what I've noticed is when things are completely insane, people go insaner. And I don't know, when people should be careful, they just go bananas. Yes. So what we've seen is our friends and clients who work in the trading space, for example, they can't keep up with the amount of people flocking to the market. People are buying Bitcoin, people are buying bees, people are buying cows. It's just the weirdest time because people are not acting rationally. And so I think there might be, I think at the moment people have to start businesses, but I think there might be an opportunity for artists, and this is what I'm saying, to capitalize on this because people are not behaving rationally at the moment in any, I mean, it's just such a weird time. What is rational even? I mean, you can't even make a claim that you're being rational, because what is a rational thing to do right now? I do think I would caution artists against going into art as an investment unless you can do it at a really very discounted rate. And that is because not because of art or artists or whatever, but that is because art, even though you are an expert at art, being an artist, art remains an alternative investment. And an alternative investment should always just be about 5% of your overall, of everything you own, only 5%. And there's a very good reason for that. It's because in the art world, who determines the price? It's really difficult. There's not an objective pricing mechanism as there is in the market, or as there is in an ETF or whatever, or even with interest rates. You know, there's some sort of mechanism that exists in those fields that determines what is fair in a price, or in an asset. And in the art world, that doesn't exist. Secondly, art is very illiquid because there's no market that you can just go to and say, okay, I have this, do you want to buy it? Yes, there are galleries that sell things, but you can't just go in there and take what you have and say, okay, can you sell this for me? So there's a liquidity issue as well. And I had a third point about, I knew you guys were going to, inflation. Like your investments have to beat inflation always, and it's really difficult if there's no way for you to determine what the price of something is going to be in the future. How do you know that this investment is going to beat inflation over time? Right. So I think there's opportunities for artists to work together to get to markets in a more interesting way. And that's something worth investing in. You know, your business as an artist, that's something worth investing in. And I think if you're going to make an investment in art, make an investment in your own art, and turn your own art into a little business that you can then, you know, take into the world.
Definitely. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay. It's funny when you how when you acknowledge in terms of how the financial industry works and in terms of how the arts work, because as well, when I look at the position that I was in, I artistically, how I had to learn to find a niche was to work very digitally with things. So when this whole kind of thing happened, there was this kind of weird place where there were platforms that I was already working on a lot, which are to showcase my work, which was not necessarily using something like galleries, right? Although I have had the relationship with galleries, but when I got personally to a point where I had to learn how to actually establish my own career, I chose a very digital way to work about it. So it's been interesting to kind of experience this whole weird, wacky situation that's going on. I feel like it was easier for me to adapt a bit to what is a crisis situation because of that. But I also don't want to be the person who seems like I'm saying, I knew this was going to happen, because those narratives are a bit like off. No one knew this was going to happen.
One thing I think that brings us back to the topic, which is adapting your vision, because we had to adapt, everyone had to adapt to the vision. And we also asking the questions, what does the artist have to do to really also adapt? What are the challenges they have to making that transition to becoming more digitally, which seems to be the solution. So this is really the main topic to see. How do one adapt in this type of situation? I'm hoping artists out there also initiating to venture into these digital spaces, which can offer them more opportunities where they really no longer are.
Please make them feel
you know what
well.
For me, and let me not generalize, let me just make it very, very local. Having an opportunity where I had no obligations to other people, which is, you know, it's a wonderful privilege to have a social circle and a family and everything, but it does take a toll emotionally on you. And then this virus happened, and suddenly world governments were saying, hey, you chill, take some time and be at home by yourself. You know, take a moment to take it all in. And for me, that was an incredibly rich period it was also incredibly difficult because it was scary and I was isolated and lonely and whatever, but a lot of amazing stuff came out of this. And it made me just realize how unbelievably adaptable we are as people, not just in our lives. And I if we were having this conversation, if you guys both worked at a small finance business and that was your entire hustle, the conversation we would have about this would be different. But I think for artists, that moment of introspection, that breath in to say, look, let me just take a second here and acknowledge that the wheels are coming the fuck off this thing, right? Like, let me just take a moment to internalize this collective freaking out that we're all going through and then turn that into something else. I think that was, if you miss that opportunity, that's really sad, especially for an artist, because I think you could hear a lot. You could hear yourself a lot better because there was so little noise.
Yeah.
And I think that this process, it's over. Well, I mean, it's over-ish, but we've been through it now, and now we're moving back, and life is going to, before we know it, it's just going to be the way that it was. And I think this moment gave a lot of people an opportunity to say, actually, I want stuff to be different. Maybe, I don't want to do something as often, or maybe I want to do it remotely or not remotely. Maybe I want to do it more. I'm sure there are artists who work digitally who started to work with more physical materials in this time because you just had so much time, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah. Sorry, that's again, that's another weird thing where I experience myself. So yeah.
Right. So my mantra for this whole thing was just allow. Like whatever came up, I was just like, all right, cool, let's do this. Now, today I'm fucking devastated. I can't get out of bed. Cool, that's fine. Today I feel super creative. I'm going to do that. That's fine. It taught me a lot about being adaptable and adaptable from moment to moment, which is not something that we get to experience that often. Our routines tend to drive us forward. And in this process, we were like, all right, well, do I want to adapt this way? Do I want to do a digital podcast or not? Should we just leave it for a while? What is it that I want for myself? So I think there's no right answer. I think if you can look back at this period and see what you could take from it to grow from it, I think that then it was worthwhile, whatever you did with your business.
In this environment of effectively everything is reduced, movement is reduced, interactions are reduced, even income is reduced. You have, in one of your discussions, you had mentioned some models that help you make better decisions, maybe while handling your personal finances or handling your business finances. Maybe I think you had 5, there's 2 that T-Swag really connected with.
One that spoke to me was the one you called the good decision ratio. It would be nice to touch on that. And then one which I've heard you as well talk on your show as well is the cost per use versus cost per unit. Just to clarify, these are financial models to help you make good decisions at a time like now. So please just elaborate and then,
I love that you chose those 2 because those are my favorites. The good decision ratio, the good decision ratio, you can actually apply to everything. Everything in your life you can use that for. So
even how to pick a girlfriend for tips.
You know what? It actually works. It works super well in dating. Okay, so basically what that comes out, it's basically you're gamifying your decisions. So what you want to say is, I want to make a good decision more often than a bad one, right? And that's really what it comes down to. So let's say you're thinking career, you're thinking diet, you're thinking exercise. You don't want to be perfect all the time because you can't be, especially if you're starting out, right? But you want to see if you can make a decision more often, a good decision more often than a bad one. So in your finances, the way for you to see how that goes, you can just adapt this to whatever you want it to be, but this is how I would do it. You look at your last 10 transactions, whatever they were. So it doesn't matter what format you use. I tend to use 22/7 because I do everything digitally so that I have a record of where everything goes.
Shout out to
Shout out to 22/7.
yeah, no.
So I go onto that and then I say, okay, these are the last 10 transactions or the transactions of the last month or the last 100, whatever you choose. Which one was a good choice and which one was iffy? You know, and this can be for like, okay, cool, I paid my levies at my house and I paid electricity and I did this, and then I bought something that I maybe could have gone without. So I got like 9 out of 10 for that. Can my next 10 be a 10 out of 10? And the idea is like, if you look at 10 transactions, if you do 5 good transactions and 5 bad ones, you're basically standing still, because it's just opposite forces, right? Working against each other. But if you
not hot.
But if you can do 6 good transactions to 4 bad transactions, then you're winning. And that's all you need to do. You never ever need to do more than that. You can always just do 6 good transactions for 4 bad transactions. But obviously, the higher that ratio becomes, the better outcomes you're going to see, and the quicker it's going to go. It's like a really good way for you to just kind of keep track of, are you living the life to the standard that you have set for yourself? And that's why I don't make any prescriptions about what a good decision is. You have to decide if that was a good decision. And if you have peace with that decision, then it's good. Cool, fine. Like, nobody is here to tell you how to live your life, right? So I love that one. It's my favorite. And then, no, it's my second favorite.
Just to elaborate on that, in the trading industry, they probably call
That's
it
exactly
the
where I
win-lose
got
ratio.
it. Yes,
And the money
I got it
management.
from trading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to be successful as a trader, effectively, the win-lose ratio needs to be in your favor. It's like tossing a coin.
So that allows you to cut off our guests
Yeah.
while they talk. That gives you license to cut off our guests while they talk.
That's why digitally is a bit hard. Real
Is
life,
you would have slid in.
but please,
That's dope,
you
man.
see
That's
the
dope.
same concept really applied in different parts of life.
I
But I've
love
also
that
encountered
in
it
trading, especially because what they talk about there is the size of your win and the size of your losses. I just adapted it from trading. I 100% just took it from there. Because what they say is, all right, you go into 10 trades and maybe you lose 5 trades and you win 5 trades, but you lose maybe like 10% on a trade and you win 20% on a trade. Then that skews that ratio a lot, right? Because it's not just how often you win or lose, it's also by how much you win or lose. So you want your winners to be bigger and you want your losers to be smaller. And this is the same. You can apply this principle that just across your whole life and say, okay, I want my losses to be small and my wins to be big. And then cost per use or cost per unit, that is my absolute favorite thing, because I make every financial decision in that way. Basically, I go, I need to spend money on this item, whatever it is. How many times am I going to use it, or how many units are in the thing that I'm buying? And what does it cost me per every time that I use it, or per every unit that's in there? So I like to use toilet paper as an example because it's the easiest way to do it. So I don't want to ever pay more than 5 Rand per roll of toilet paper. I feel like that's my limit, right? So what you do is you take the price of the toilet paper, you divide by the number of rolls, and that's your cost per roll of toilet paper. And you can do this with rice. The price of rice divided by the amount of grams. But where it becomes super handy is then for stuff that you're going to buy for your life and for your home. Because what it helps me to do is I look at something and I go, oh, I really, really, really want that. And then I have to say, okay, how often am I going to use that? So my family, at the beginning of this year, went through a very weird waffle phase. So my brother lives in Canada, my parents live in Vienna, and I live by myself. And the two of them, I don't know how that happened, but they had decided that waffles are now all the thing. And so my brother got a waffle maker. And my parents have a waffle maker that I didn't even know that they had, right? Okay. And then I started thinking, but that's such a stupid purchase, because if my brother had eaten a waffle every weekend for the last year, then the waffle maker would make complete sense, because in the next year, he is going to divide.
Just to say I have a waffle maker on Instagram, hard copies. Please, I get you. I really know them.
But yeah, so if he was gonna make if he ate waffles every weekend, then he could divide the price of the waffle maker by 52 to get to his cost per use in a year. But they don't eat it every weekend. They've had it once since you got the waffle maker. So the cost per use of the waffle maker is the cost of the waffle maker, right? So let's say it was 500 Rand. He basically ate 500 Rand waffles. Now, the reason why that's dumb is because he could have gone out and bought a waffle for 50 Rand, right? So it helps you just to phrase things a bit differently in your head. And I know people think that I'm being pedantic and miserly when I do that, but honestly, it helps me so much when I make, especially when you're like in the store and you're feeling the impulse or you wanting to be impulsive in your purchases.
Yeah.
I think this is very powerful if the artist can see it when they are really working. Oh, that's
what I'm doing. That's dope. We appreciate that. Shout out. Who's that? What's his name?
The co-host.
The co-host. He's writing all the notes. What's up, G?
So artists recently went through with Teeth an art process, which I was new at. And I got to understand that there's a lot of input costs that come in to produce the beautiful art that you eventually see at the fair. And one thing that's quite important is obviously the final price that you believe would be a fair price to charge. But to charge a fair price, you have to take into account the cost that led you to produce the unit. And I think that concept of yours really could do well in a setting where an artist is looking at input costs and wants to see how much they can get the most out of whatever they're purchasing. For example, Teeth was working and they schooled me on paper. Apparently, there's hot people out there producing the hottest paper. I thought paper was just paper, but now paper is not just paper. And there's people who are producing, moderately priced paper, which you can, if you're new to me, I'd ask why you're not using that other paper and this paper. Who are those lovely brands, Teeth? Let's start with
Fabriani.
Say that again.
Fabriani paper.
Fabriani paper.
Yeah, boy.
And then the German one.
It's a paper that I used for like photo digital printed stuff. It's Hanamio. I could be pronouncing it wrong, but we're gonna Google will sort us out. We'll get an AI thing to give us the right pronunciation. But yeah, Hanamio.
This paper is by Hanamio. They are very experienced when it comes to making fine art paper.
So it's input costs such as this that you really have to apply your mind to see what you're eventually getting out of. How much am I spending on inventory to produce my art? Is it not idle money that's sitting there and I'm not producing as many art pieces that I should? So I think it's a very good model to really help artists manage their
So I think also for artists, which really, when it comes to the sale of your artworks and how to determine that, I always find that creatives tend to undersell themselves a bit. And especially when you're new and you're just starting out and you haven't maybe done quite as much. And I think it's worthwhile to sit down. To sit down and think about the value of your perspective. And I think that's really interesting. That to me, that's something that I could, I've been thinking about risk for probably 2 years, just the concept of risk. And I think that this is something like, what is the value, the monetary value of my perspective? That is something that I can spend 2 years thinking about. I think as an artist, it's worthwhile thinking about that because there's also an intersection between the materials you use and the value of your perspective. And you need to understand what adds the most value. Yes, your materials matter. Yes. Of course, nobody wants a terrible quality product, but your perspective is what makes you worth buying. It's like, I don't, as a consumer of art, I don't know whether you use the good paper or the bad paper. As a consumer of art, I value your perspective, and that's what I'm paying for.
Exactly, and that but then we can open up it's almost Pandora's box with art because cause or who can I don't know, Banksy or sometimes Banksy will go and he'll take printing paper and he'll do a Banksy,
I do know
you
him,
know
yeah.
the street artist Banksy. I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, he'll take a cheap piece of printing paper and he'll do one of his stencils and then he'll put them up then and it will sell for, you know,
That's
people
interesting because
will
that's
go all crazy about it. But
sorry, that's
look,
reputation, right? So there's perspective that got Banksy to be Banksy, and now there's reputation. So he is costing him. The reason why you're paying a premium is because he is costing his reputation on top of his perspective. It's not just his perspective anymore that you're paying for, and that's weird because that takes a bit.
We need perspective.
So that's the bag. That's okay. That's really cool. That's really cool. Look, I think, you know, I've pretty much got like one other question that I'd like to ask you. I'm not sure. And I'm gonna just try simplify this question, but it was in terms of money habits. And so I found myself even through this phase, right? There was a very direct scenario where through listening to getting a lot of information just about money after making just beyond ridiculous mistakes throughout my whole life, I got to a point where I kind of started really hacking this saving thing. I was able to kind of, money comes in, some I don't even know what it's got to do, but I don't even like want to know that money is there. It's kind of just put it away somewhere. I was starting to get good at that, but now a crisis and a pandemic happens, and there's certain things that I wanted to teach myself to get out of the way. So, and I was kind of reading some books, and there was just bad debt that I wanted to get out of the way. Like bad debt, which is just like bad, which is, we have machonistas, the machonistas, right? There's things like that, just like bad, ridiculous debt that you don't need. So it's like, I wanted to just allocate to just getting rid of bad debt, because I kept finding myself in a scenario where, what's the point of me putting money away if I'm still not getting rid of like stupid debt, So, but then that got me into a habit where I started understanding where I probably now feel like I relapsed a little, because once I started I got rid of that like really bad stuff, but I was starting to, there's always this debate between like saving and I don't know, there's this debate between like saving is almost like you're doing like something old and it's not going to grow your money, versus trying to just be a bit smarter and actually grow your money. So it's almost like I found myself getting in a situation where I will start doing things which don't necessarily mean I must just like save, but I don't want to stop saving because I know that's important as well. So it's like, so that's my question to you, however it makes sense. So yeah, my question was more no. My question is actually my question is more on habits, because I've heard you speaking about, you said like you had gotten very good with credit card spending, and then like you'd cut that off, but then you kind of got that little habit creeped up again, you started doing it again. So I'm trying to understand, is there ways to, maybe how you find yourself working through those things? So that
it's really important to cut yourself a lot of slack here. It's important to understand why it is that you have three concepts that you just touched on that are all three true, but I think you would be able to make better decisions if you understood why they were true. So that you have to get rid of debt. And so there's this podcast that we did yonks ago. It's called The 5 Concepts to Make You Rich. And it basically is just 5 very simple financial principles that you need to understand that allows you to make better decisions in the long run. And you touched on 3 of them now. Actually, you touched on 2 because no, let's say 3. All right. So you want to avoid debt.
Thank you.
You want to avoid debt because of interest. So interest is money that you pay for the privilege of using other people's money, or it's money that you get that other people pay you for the privilege of using your money. So now you've answered 2 questions. Why is debt bad and why is savings good? Because with debt, you pay interest for the privilege of using the bank's money. That's a little fee that you pay for using other people's money. And when you save, the bank takes your money and like uses it to make money of their own. And so they pay you a little fee, much smaller fee than you pay them, of course, because banks, but they pay you a little fee for using your money. So now you are on the good side and the bad side of interest here. And the problem, remember the small losses and the big wins? What you have here is a big loss and a small win, because you are paying on a credit card 17% interest, and in your bank account, you're earning 5% interest. So you're paying more for the privilege of using other people's money. Oh, sorry about that. That's very noisy. Then other people are paying you for the privilege of using your money, right? So those two are really important to understand. The thing that you feel like you're missing. So now I think you feel like you're being a little bit old-fashioned by having cash saved instead of doing something more exciting with your money, like investing. And the reason why there is a difference there is, so when we talk about risk, and it's actually, we did a whole podcast about this yesterday. When we talk about risk, we say that the outcome is different than the outcome you were expecting. So in a short-term portfolio, if you put your money in something like shares, the price of shares go up and down a lot in a short period of time. But over time, they go up. And so for you to make money from shares, you need a little bit of time so that you don't have to sell when the market is down and then you can lose money. So that's a risk for shares. What people don't talk about is there's an inverse risk for cash. The longer you keep cash, the more risky it becomes. And that's because of the third concept, which is inflation. So inflation reduces your spending power over time. So the longer you hold on to cash, the more risk inflation introduces to your personal portfolio, which is now just consisting of cash. So what you want to do is you want to have a combination of the two, right? So you want to have some money that is earning you interest because you need to be able to cover yourself in an emergency, to protect. So that becomes almost like insurance for your investments. You want to protect your long-term stuff from short-term movements by not having to sell them when they go up and down, right? So you want, in the end, to have a little bit of a combination of this. But if you are starting out and your journey is the same as mine, I was in 100Ks worth of debt when I was like 23 years old because I was a fool and I didn't know how any of this stuff worked and nobody had explained it to me, and so I also had to kind of forgive myself for that. Going through this process of paying back your debt gives you a wonderful habit of saving. The habit of paying back debt and the habit of saving is the same habit. And when I paid off my debt, I was like, whoa, look at me, I'm a super saver, because I was already used to not having that money that I had to put towards the debt, except now it was working for me instead of working for the bank. And I think that process, give yourself enough time to internalize that feeling. Because I think what happens a lot of times is that people are like, oh, I have to do something. And it's almost like a panic decision. They go out and they go buy something weird, instead of going, all right, well, let me internalize this. Let me understand just interest. Let me just understand how interest works. Let me look at my credit card statement and my bank statement and see where interest plays a role. And then let me try and figure out why they say my interest is 17%, but I only pay 2% now. Like, what's going on here? And the same on the other side. Why do I earn so little interest when I'm paying so much interest? And once you internalize that, then you start to understand, all right, cool, I'm earning a bit of money here, but I'm losing a bit of money there. And then you can move on to inflation. All right, now where does inflation fit into all of this and how can I understand that? And once you have inflation, then you can start thinking, okay, compounding. That's the other one that you need to think about. Like, how does compounding work? And when you are learning about interest, you also almost intuitively learn about compounding because you have that money sitting there and now there's more money than the previous time. Why? That's compounding and you see that happening. So these are very basic things, but I think it's really important not to be hard on yourself about it. There's time, you can figure it out. It's not difficult. You are going to get there. Just don't. Unfortunately, when it comes to personal finances, you can only change or do anything one income at a time, one paycheck at a time. The change is slow. That's why I was saying at the beginning, it takes 3 years for people to be like, oh, I finally did my first investment. The process is slow because you have to implement month by month, or if you're a freelancer, invoice by invoice. Oh, and that's the other thing that I really wanted to say to artists is when we talk about this financial management stuff, we tend to default to salary earners just because it's easier, because that's, it's just easier to explain when we talk about salaries. But a lot of you guys don't have a steady income. You have it's very project based. So what I want you to think about is not what are you going to do, like what is the goal that you want to get to or whatever. I want you to think about what percentage of all of the money that comes into your life you are going to put towards your future. So you can be like, I'm going to do a fifth or a third or whatever income that it is that is coming towards you. You have to say, that's what I'm going to do for my emergency fund, because this needs to cover my expenses for a year. Like, I think if you don't have a steady income, that emergency fund needs to be really thick. So I need to cover my expenses for a year. And to do that, for whatever income I'm earning, I'm going to put 1/5 of that income towards my future and then do with the rest what I need to do with the rest. You do it on an invoice by invoice basis.
And if I were to pose the question to my fellow artists, how many artists have pension funds or pension plan, retirement plans? It's something even much more difficult, I guess, for them to steadily build up to. But it's truly required by whoever you are. Eventually, you have to think about retirement and how you're going to live off retirement. Unfortunately, those erratic paychecks have to cover that too. So it's something.
I think though, I think getting to where we are within this conversation. I think those kind of questions, as to sum it up on, where visionaries meet. I think those are, having you here as well. I think that's the most amazing part, because I think those kind of uncomfortable discussions, which are hard to understand, hard to break down. I think, you've created a platform that allows certain access to those kind of conversations. And if people have those concerns, obviously that's what you're there for. We have our own way of trying to bring it to a creative and artist audience, and artists, a creative centered kind of audience as well. So I think that's the beauty of what we're all collectively trying to do. I think that's what's up.
I'll say that if you're an artist and you have worked a retirement plan some way, then you are truly a visionary.
Yeah.
If you can see 65 and beyond, then you're truly a visionary. That's for me.
But any maybe parting advice outside of the fact that there's two things everyone watching this should do. Should listen to our podcast and listen to her podcast. do you have any maybe
parting words of advice?
How people can keep in contact with you?
This is there's so much that I want to say. I think I'm
Don't worry, we can do follow-ups.
I'm excited. I'm excited
we can do follow-ups.
I think I'd like to challenge artists, because I think what happens a lot of times is we get so like, well, this is not my field, and so I'm just going to avoid it. But I think we are at a moment in our history where you guys can really change the way that the industry works. You can change the way that artists get paid. You can change the way that you think about your own financial situation and your future. You can think about a level, I think what every artist dreams of, and what I dream of, is a level of financial independence where you can just forget about the money and just focus on the art completely. And I think that's something definitely I'd encourage everybody to look into, is how does that, it's called financial independence, retire early, or FIRE. How do they get to those things? Because there's like a bunch of people who are in their 30s and 40s who have retired because they managed to accumulate so much wealth. How did they manage to do that? And what were the principles that were underlying those things? And then make sure that I think as an artist, you have such an idea of what it is that your ideal life looks like. And that probably has a lot to do with a lot of time and a lot of freedom for creativity. And you have an advantage because a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't understand what it is that they want money for, or what it is that they want the freedom for. So because you already have that figured out, you actually have a lot already to set yourself up to be in a really stable financial situation and to free up your mind and your mental energy to be more creative and to do better. But I also think that because creativity is something that you can tap into and encourage, I think that you can creatively deal with the industry as well, and you can creatively find solutions for how artists are paid, how artists work together. You know, I think that this is a beautiful moment in history, because I think we're going to see a lot of cool stuff, and I'm excited to see what you guys do.
No, definitely. I think we think so too, collectively. In terms of sources of advice, I'm sure you have a lot of people hitting you up for advice on specific topics. How do you usually guide people to clear and reliable information?
To go to justonelap.com, which is us. So it's LAP at the end. A lot of people are like just one leap, but it's not a leap. It's a lap, as in a lap that you run. So justonelap.com, you can find the Fact Wallet Show there. And I really encourage you to go through the Fact Wallet Show archive, because we discuss a lot of things. Like it's really deep and broad. You know, there's a lot that we've spoken about. And from there on out, if you have any specific questions, we answer every single question that we get from our community on the show. So you can send those questions to ask at justonelap.com. But I'm also on Twitter at KristiaVH. It's KristiaVH. And you can find Just One Lap on Twitter as well. So we are very reachable. We're very eager to talk to you guys. We do a lot of events and a lot of live events. So we would encourage you. They're always free, which I know is important. So we encourage you to come to these things. And even if you're not really interested in what the topic of the evening is, you come to these events and you get to meet a lot of really cool and interesting people who are all trying to figure out their money from all walks of life. So that's really fun as well.
No, that's fantastic. I think that will bring us to the tail end of our show. Thank you very much for taking time to meet us with our lovely little setup here, and taking the time to give us your perspective into how we can all, regardless if you're male, female, artist or not, how we can all try and better our management of our finances, and we can all be better off in the future. I think it's knowledge that we can pass it down to the younger kids coming through. So I'm glad to do shows like this where I learn more and more and more. Number one, what I got was fire, and alternative investments should constitute 5% of your portfolio.
There we go.
Do not spend 50%. I got savings.
Yeah.
Is it beating inflation?
Yeah. But spend that 5% nonetheless on art.
For sure. Final words.
Thank you so much. And just thank you so much for being welcoming to us. Thank you so much for being sharing your information with whoever's watching and whoever's listening. And you've just been very welcome. We had all our technical issues and stuff, and we're open. We'd love to whether follow up on some whichever time, but we're open to just have just keep going with what you're doing. And please keep going with what you're doing. And
guys, this was such an honor for me.
Appreciate it.
Sorry.
We'll send you a link. Lovely.
Nice.
We'll send you a link to our mixtape. The hottest mixtape in the streets right now. I was rhyming circles around this young man here. But it will be lovely if you could give us give it a hear and see how you find it. Watch out, everyone, for my solo tape, but we've had creative differences, so I dropped them from the label. So
can I just say, the next time I would love to do this face to face. I'd like to do a little kizomba with one of you guys, and I want drink, please. No more of this sober business. Thank you.
There we go. There we go.
That's the full format of the show.
There we go. You've got the format.
you, guys.
Done. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Christian.
very much.
Thank you, guys.
Over and out from Finance for Hippies.
Peace. Boom.
Swag and Ducky.
Perfect. So we have a couple of comments. We have from Kudashwe. Do you think that the financial institutions are evolving quick enough to actually start properly servicing artists as clients?
To be honest, I'd say no. In terms of products out there, we find that people in that type of industry and mindset have never really been catered for in terms of products being issued by banks, which is understandable. Banks usually, or the financial industry, want to cater for the larger masses, but there is quite a big chunk of people who function in that space and need certain products be catered for. This is the reason why we started this podcast, to really see how an artist is really functioning financially in the system.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We also have a comment from Sanele, who says, "We put money away and need it 3 days later." Any comment about that?
Yeah, well, South Africa generally is not a very great saving nation. We do poorly, I think, in terms of rankings as to how much we save, which is quite unfortunate, because if situations like this transpire, you needed to dip into those little savings that really could help you out. If you don't have savings, it really reflects on how well one is prepared for emergencies. So that's one thing we've always, season 1, season 2, we've always tried to look into, as to how to advise or discuss people as to how to improve savings. Personally, I won't even act like I'm very good at saving. It's very hard, but it's something that we all need to work on. And this story of tapping into your savings 3 days later and Pick n Pay is really not proper money management. Chief?
I also think what helped me personally, we also usually have like a disclaimer of this is not financial advice, whatever, because I've had like the exact same kind of problems, especially, as an artist and such things. But I think what started to help me to get around those things is to find places where where I can save whenever money comes in. I can save it, but also it's very hard for me to get it out. So there's lots of places around and banks and institutions that are actually good at that, where some you don't even get like a bank card, for example, and just the process to withdraw your money is quite difficult and hard. So those things are, there's little hacks around it. That, as I said, those are the kind of things that have been helping me. But yeah, the 3-day withdrawal thing is not a hard one to get through.
Yeah. One of the things out also, our podcast, I'm sure other podcasts like the Fed Wallet, we actually like to plug in products from banks that can improve or help people save a bit more. We always try and explore different products, their restrictions, look at maybe their tax implications, but we are quite open to innovative industry players to, if they want to us to put on their products to see how they can help the artists out there. For us, that's what the whole vision of the podcast is.
Fantastic. And we're getting some great questions from our guests here. Sanele has another question. Can we really talk savings without discussing artist exploitations in terms of getting paid their worth?
So what, is that a comment or a question? Can you please?
Sure. Can we really talk savings without discussing artist exploitations in terms of getting paid their worth? So how can artists put away savings when they're not getting paid properly?
Yeah, so one of we alluded this point in the podcast as well. Fair pricing of your products that you sell when it comes to determining the true cost of how you produce. So you must know the cost to make sure that you can sell it properly, where you cover the cost and make a bit of money to live off. So when exploitation comes in, usually it comes in I'm not too into that side of the art, but it would be really when you are not too sure where's the line where you're breaking even on it.
Yeah.
For me, if someone is trying to take advantage of you from a negotiation perspective, you will always have a hard line where you know that here, if I go below this price, to be honest, I'm making a loss. And then sometimes it's worthwhile to take the loss when you are getting a bit of exposure, but you do that consciously, knowing that you are getting something back, but not in monetary terms. Not all wealth is accumulated in a form of money. So that's why we advocate, and that's why we discuss some of those models that our guest alluded to. We encourage the artists to determine the true cost of the product, which in turn will allow them to fairly price their product. And when negotiation kicks in, they know exactly where to draw the line, knowing exactly where they're making a little bit of money or they're truly being taken advantage of. Chief, comments around that?
Yeah. That pretty much co-sign everything that Ndaki is saying. I think one thing that artists are generally good at as well is that we're good at exploiting ourselves. So people will then also come with that kind of mentality when they're either working with us and they're doing things with us. And it's a much larger conversation, but it's obviously something that us ourselves are investigating and trying to put a lot more thinking around it, because it is hard to save when the environment is very exploitatory. So we're trying to work around what conversations can we actually have around ourselves, and it's hard enough getting just artists to be involved in the conversation of money, because money has got there's so many politics around it, and but it's definitely it's something that it's something that's very real, but a lot of the answers lie within us learning to stop exploiting ourselves and creating platforms where we discuss money more and engage with people who can help us do those things better.
And sorry to add that for me, I found that over the last 2 years or so, I work quite closely with artists. I found that they're quite emotional, specifically around what they have done. They attach a lot of emotion to it. Sometimes it's advisable to try and shut down the emotions a bit and be a bit more economical.
Get the tough stuff out.
When you are negotiating or discussing, or you feel like people are taking advantage of you, sometimes it's best to switch off the emotions a bit so you can make better logical decisions that will serve you better in the future.
Great. So we have another question here. Do you think that art schools are doing enough to teach artists about the business side of art?
Actually, one of the podcasts that we made a joke one time that one of these art schools need to adapt our podcast as part of the curriculum, because Teeth has went through the full process of in the art school, and I think it's quite generally
it's a straightforward no for me. It's just a straightforward no, and it's challenging because you'll find that even lecturers themselves, just money is such a sensitive topic and issue. So from my experience of the system within art schools and such things, no, it's just a straightforward no. It's challenging even for us to be driving this conversation with people like that, to be working with us with what we're trying to do. But for me, it's a straight no at this point. I don't think they are doing enough.
Okay, and where would you recommend that
Well,
artists should go to get this knowledge?
naturally check out our podcast.
But every streaming platform.
Yeah, sure. But generally, there's quite a lot of platforms. Quite a lot of reliable sources that tackle different topics.
Even just one.
Things like the Fat Wallet podcast, the group Just One Lab. They provide free education. The problem that how we I'm sure when people take a look at our podcast and see how it's packaged and the product we're trying to sell, we found that the artist mind setting does not last very well trying to dig through this heavy information of financial literacy. They lose interest, attention diminishes, and they really lose that value that's very important for them together. That's why we tried to package our product, bring in so many elements, the drinking part, the guests we bring in, the aesthetics, the music, the mixtapes we release. They're all themed around educating the artist, providing financial information to them, but catered in a very unique way in which the mind of an artist can digest. That's really the corner that we felt we belong to, because we have the same problem. You can go onto YouTube or wherever, you can find in hours lectures around pension funds and how to do it, but no one lasts maybe 10 minutes through those type of content.
Exactly. And sorry, just to I'll obviously just try to be quick on that, but I think it's not by mistake that we had a guest like Christia as part of our episode as well, because they themselves have been brilliant at that, at just working around this idea of making accessible content and information around money. And there's content creators that you're finding on Twitter, your Nicolette Mashiles, your what is it? Obviously Christy herself, but I've also found things like financial literacy Twitter to be quite interesting. And another dude called Stealthy Wealthy, who there are people. It's almost like the conversation, because it's become so difficult at a high level. There are people, there are content creators who are really trying to democratize the space and make the information a bit more digestible to people who are really out here struggling with it as well. So there's lots going on out here, and people, this is what we're trying to get people involved with as well.
Fantastic. And I love that name, Stealthy Wealthy. So we have quite a financial question here, which is great. We have blockchain is revolutionizing traditional commodity markets. Do you think that is going to change how the art industry will operate now and in the future?
I won't even pretend to know too much about these new ways of e-money, as they usually call it, but they have over the last couple of years picked up traction. People are looking at them, but one must be able to really segregate as to what they actually do and the art industry. Those are really two separate type of sort of like commodities or fields. Mixing the two would be quite brave. Personally, I would not mix the two too much. I would separate them, but they are quite risky. I think everyone, if you pay attention to these sort of things, the Bitcoin blockchain mechanisms are quite volatile, and you need to know what you really doing there. So for me, I wouldn't see the two necessarily affecting the other, meaning the blockchain structure really adding or removing to the art industry. But if the two are indeed connected, you would see some new products coming in there, which is generally the move to a digital space nonetheless. But the two, it's at this point in time quite separated.
Can I make a comment on that? I think, interestingly enough, I had an exhibition in 2015, funnily enough, where one of the artworks that I'd made were available in Bitcoins, and I guess from my side, it was a way to actually investigate that idea and the potential of all of that. So obviously it was more out of interest to bring this idea to people, and this was in 2015. And yeah, I mean, I didn't make any sales in Bitcoin, so anyone who was interested in purchasing work just purchase in rands or whatever. But I was trying to kind of even have discounts if people are paying in cryptocurrencies and such things. And it was always funny when there was the big Bitcoin boom that happened like two years ago. And I was like, done, if just one or two people had just like purchased pieces, that would have been quite interesting. Because, I'm fascinated as well by what those technologies are bringing to the game. They're definitely going to play some part. A lot of times, obviously, these technologies are in their infancy, and it will be amazing to see what part they're going to play, within the art space as well, Yeah. So that's my comment.
Funny enough, some trivia. 50 Cent also released an album where you could purchase it with Bitcoin. One of the first few albums that was sold using cryptocurrency. That's redundant information for you guys there.
Great. No, it's interesting to see these in between spaces that people are experimenting with and playing with.
Yeah.
Great. How would you like financial brands to work with you going forward?
Well, for us,
the big rant about this behind the scenes yesterday. But anyway, yeah.
No. For me, first of all, it would be nice to, as the question came in earlier, for some players in the financial industry to try and cater for this type of industry. For the people who work in and the particular requirements. For us, we would definitely love to partner with any people who believe they can offer and contribute value to this sector of the market, which is fairly sizable. You'd be surprised how many people really function in this sort of setup. Some permanently, some part-time, but this way of thinking, the artist's way of life, the hippie life, as we call it, it's there, it exists, and it's untapped. And it will be interesting to see how banks, financial institutions try and provide solutions to these people. We're open to work with any bank that can, or any financial industry participant, to see how we can add value. Most of what we try and do really is to not to provide so much entertainment, but to actually provide value to our listeners.
I think you're more long-winded than I expected. I think it's quite simple. We're making a product. I think we've got, our product speaks through art. We've got, a whole cartoon narrative. We've got music that we try package and put out in an interesting way. We've got a podcast. We're building a brand, so we've got various different elements at which whoever wants to work with us, all the stuff we're doing, it comes at a cost. So it's a simple thing of that. We've got different packages and different things that we're thinking and different ideas of how we want to put our product out there. But it's quite simple. If people can meet us halfway in terms of the money that is required for us to push and build our product, so that we are able to be more effective and actually help bring value in the marketplace that we're trying to do. So
which is really, if you ask an artist, they have a great vision and idea. Traditional finance for them is not really an option. As with us, our product is really not something traditional. We wouldn't pop into a bank and ask for a loan for season 4 and to record the mixtape and to shoot videos. The model requires people who understand the space. So we are facing the same challenge that other artists and guests that have come on and say, yeah, we have a great idea, but we find it hard to communicate our ideas to people with funding, to provide funding to our ideas and bring them to life. So it's unique that we're living the same problem that other people, artists are living out there.
Great. And just to, a quick disclaimer as well, that this talk isn't affiliated with RMB. This is all independent financial advice. Great. So we have, so we have another question here. The conversation around money is, the questions around money are never easy, especially when it comes to artists. How has the response been from the art community to what you guys are doing?
From my side, it's been, it's been interesting. So after we did a first season of it, it was, what can I say? It was well received. We did like a bit of market research with our audience. So some was centered directly around artists, and some was centered around just general observers of the content, and just from general back and forth with the creative community. I think those who find it really enjoy the idea and the concept of it. So for example, what we did in the first season, we didn't have visuals, but literally all the people who are the creatives were like, okay, this is cool, we enjoy the podcast, but like, why is it not on YouTube? Why is it not, why doesn't it have visual elements to it? So it's from a conceptual point of view, they've really been engaged and interested in it. But the reality that we find out, and because obviously our audience is visual as well, visual and creative. So they've enjoyed it when they've seen it, but in order to facilitate and continue the relationship that we are trying to develop with them, we need to be producing more content more constantly, because it's something that they know that they need there. And again, money is very uncomfortable. So we're trying to create that space where artists can get into a conversation with money. But yeah, so I can say it's been well received, but there's a consistency that's required. And, that's also that's the hard part on ourselves to figure out, how do we constantly put this product out there? Because all the other financial products that are out there are a lot more consistent, and they overwhelm the conversation in comparison to what we can do. But so I think they just desire us to be more consistent and package it. I mean, also we heard people talk about, they want like us to have like little 15-minute segments instead of rambling for like an hour and a half. So maybe have like ad breaks, or have little things that change the the engagement experience as well. So I haven't had anyone listen to it and be like, oh, this is bad. I've just had people like, this is really cool, this is great, could we add visuals to it? Could it come out more? Could there be more diversity in these kind of things? So it's been well received, but there also have been, critiques in terms of just expectations, because people want to see us do it more and do it at a higher level so that they can access it more as well. You cool?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys give online workshops?
No, we do not purport to be any financial gurus or experts. What we're really trying to do is to facilitate the conversation. Going back to the feedback, what I realized from the feedback I got from the listeners of the podcast was that I realized there was actually a serious gap in terms of financial literacy. The artist, the hippie, wasn't really informed as to what other financial mechanisms they have available. And what was more, I think, devastating was that there was really no discussion around it to facilitate the transfer of knowledge from one person to another. That's the whole point where we try to do the podcast, to encourage the discussions amongst the hippie, who deem it to be taboo to talk about money. How are you doing financially as an artist? They prefer to keep it more on the outside and look at that specific work. But whether you are not doing well or not, it's not something that it's encouraged to discuss. And that's what we're trying to break. So we don't really offer workshops because, to be honest, we will not really be qualified to offer that type of workshop. We would, if opportunity came, facilitate and provide who we deem to be people with the appropriate knowledge. But as it is, we only, to the matter, encourage as best as we can the discussion around money and art.
If someone cuts the checks, we are willing to look at the workshop proposals. I know it's not necessarily the area of focus, but yeah, you know, we're willing to work with anyone, really. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, this really, these conversations are so important and need to happen. So we really appreciate you coming onto the TAF platform and sharing some of that knowledge with us. We just have another question come in from Sanele. With the social media instant gratification movement, how has this changed the visual artist space of existing outside the pressure of always being visible? The recluse artist who speaks only through her artwork is becoming a thing of the past. Artists are now also caught up in the hamster wheel of content creation.
I'll leave, he's quite familiar with this problem, which I'm sure he has challenges with.
Yeah, that's a very involved question and multifaceted, but it also sounds like a bit more of a comment. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's the reality of what is happening right now and how artists are existing, and it's, you know, people, I guess it's almost like there's this need to be active, because you can even find that people who work within the art space, if you're an artist, people are now going on Google and they want to like see how your Instagram page looks, and they want to see how, you know, to them that's proof of being active. You know, do you have a website? Do you and you know, it becomes challenging because there's guys who are brilliant. There are guys who are phenomenal, who I know, and they struggle to just build and connect with a certain audience who have now adapted to that way of living. They're interested in the art. They want to invest in artists. They want to learn about artists. They want to hear from artists. But you have this wave of artists who are also now struggling with this thing of, but my process is offline. Maybe I'm a sculptor. Maybe I'm a sculptor. I mean, or, you know, it's a very interesting conversation and challenge that I see a lot of artists going through, especially, you know, really good artists who aren't necessarily gifted in communicating within those spaces. But on the other side, the evolution, I believe, is just part of what people, you know, what artists are also having to now figure out. It's an important space. From my side, I'm able to, you know, I'm not really accessing a big art collector market or anything like that. I'm dealing with a lot of first-time buyers or people who are very interested in the field and just want to kind of know how we move and how we work around. And those people, it's easier for me to kind of access those people through Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's free. It's, well, not free, but, you know, it's just easier to have that access by being active on those platforms than it would be before. So, you know, I would strongly advise it, you know, and if you can't do it necessarily, I mean, maybe just be very effective on a single channel. And there's guys who are very effective just on one social media channel, and they build an audience there. And, you know, things start working. But it's a challenge we're all going through. It takes away from the romanticism of just sitting in the studio and doing your work, you know.
Great. Yeah, essentially it becomes your shop window, right? That's social media. Exactly. And just even, you know, for me, the only last thing I'd like to add on that is
I literally had to learn, because when I was in art school, I was so overwhelmed by the costs of art. But it's like I had to learn, wait a minute, okay, my cell phone, my laptop, I had to kind of figure out to make these things that I already have, where if I talk at home and say I need these things, they'll get them for me because they understand them more than they understand getting me a whole pot of clay and all these things. But I had to figure out a way to use those things to actually create the art. So you can find that if you can end up having a phone that is almost your studio in itself, like you're walking around with access to that kind of stuff. So yeah, quite interesting time.
Yeah, we're going to end with one last question. In terms of South African art, what are the new trends that you see emerging?
For me, I'm entry level in terms of art. I won't even purport to be an art expert, but for me, I'm more traditional. I don't know. I've preferred more traditional art pieces. I know teeth is a bit more on the edge, but I think it goes with taste and what you actually prefer. At the end of the day, you have to enjoy the art, especially if you're not in the investing side of art and you want art to enjoy it. You have to really follow your preferences. I move away from trends, to be honest, even if there's certain things I tend to like in certain trends, but I generally stick to quite the traditional. Teeth would admit that I'm very traditional connoisseur of the arts.
Yeah. No. A trend I see is people all saying they are not part of a trend. That's definitely a trend that is what's happening right now. But I would say obviously, I mean, the definite one is a consistent rise in the black art is definitely or diversity within the art space. Let me put it like that. I'm seeing a definite need for more female artists, I think. So I'm not sure whether I should say that's a trend, but I think that the fact that people are starting to question why we're not having as much inclusion in that kind of way within the art space is something that's going to be, I think, a driver within the art that we're seeing. So I think we're going to start seeing a bit more diversity. And I think we're going to see artists questioning the relationship between the online world and the world of actually making and creating art, how one can create valuable art through having a relationship with making work online. So, I think those are the discussions that are happening. I think diversity within the space, though, is definitely something that I think it's going to be trailblaze the art space in terms of people. I don't think people want art, from whether it's people in the most disadvantaged communities to the wealthiest places. People want art and they have a need for it, and they want to see themselves being represented through it, and that will always increase their engagement and their enjoyment and understanding of it. So yeah,
100%. Great. So just to wrap up, where can we find your content, your podcasts, your mixtapes, and how do we contact you? How do I get hold of you with more questions?
Our website, we have a website, financeforhippies.com. So that's pretty much got everything. You can get our mixtape on there. You can get every episode of our podcast. And it's just Finance for Hippies everywhere. I think Twitter has been really cool for us. We've got groups on Facebook as well. financeforhippies@gmail.com.
We're on the streaming platforms as well.
Yeah, streaming platforms. We're on every streaming platform as well. So the podcast is, you can get it anywhere. It's just Finance for Hippies. And if ever you want to, have just like conversations and thoughts, I think Twitter's been a very good space for us as well. But yeah, our website is pretty much, you get to see what we're up to, and it has everything that we are doing. And yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. I look so forward to hearing what you guys do going forward. And thanks for the insights and for inviting an amazing guest for the Turbine Art Fair edition of Finance for Hippies.
Don't worry. We'll figure out a way to hopefully next year is going to be live.
Yeah.
We want to do a music performance to open up the the show. But yeah, no, thank you as well. I think it's been a learning
Thank you very much
experience.
for hosting us here.
Been a learning experience for all of us, and just being welcoming to allow us to share the space and show what we're trying to do.
Fantastic. And thanks to all of our guests, and enjoy the rest of the fair. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Bye.